The gun was pointed straight at my daughter's chest, and for a split second I forgot how to breathe. The so-called HOA security officer had his finger dangerously close to the trigger, his voice trembling, but full of fake authority as he barked, "Step back, ma'am, she's trespassing." My hands went up instinctively, and all I could think about was how a peaceful morning had turned into this night. In our quiet suburban street, the sun was high, kids were riding bikes, and suddenly there we were surrounded by neighbors, peeking from behind curtains, their phones out, recording every second. Before we even comment which country you're watching from, because this story, it still sends chills down my spine every time I tell it. That morning had started so normal, it almost felt boring. I was trimming the hedge by our mailbox, coffee still warm on the porch railing, when my daughter Lily pulled up in her black suit. She had just returned from another one of her training trips, as she always called them. She wore her usual faded jeans and a hoodie, hair tied back tight, nothing that screamed fight tactical commander to the neighborhood. She was just my quite-a-fake daughter, who sometimes disappeared for weeks. She smiled, waved at me, then turned across the street and carried in a few boxes for me. I didn't know those few minutes would be the last peaceful ones before Chaz unfolded. I first noticed him pacing near the HOA gate, short, stocky, with a shinny badge clipped to his belt and a black polo shirt that read Community Security. I had never seen him before, and his eyes were scanning every car like a hawk. He looked out of place, tittery, like he'd watched too many cop movies. When Lily stepped out again to grab something from her cart, he stormed across the street, yelling, "You can't park there. This is private HOA property." She turned around, calm as ever, and said, "Sir, this is my mother's driveway." But he wasn't listening. He walked closer, chest offhand, hovering over the gun at his hip. I remembered shouting, "Hey, take it easy," but he ignored me. The neighborhood had gone dead, silent. Then everything happened too fast. He accused her of posing as law enforcement, claiming someone reported her for suspicious behavior. Lily frowned, confused, and said softly, "You need to lower your weapon right now." He laughed. "Oh, what are you gonna do, arrest me?" That was when I noticed a small, supple smirk forming on her face, the one she used when she knew someone had just made a serious mistake. Her tone shifted instantly, steady, commanding, terrifyingly calm. I said, "Lower your weapon," but the fake security guy didn't back off. He pulled the gun higher, finger tightening on the trigger. I could see her jaw tense, her eyes darting between his stance and his badge. She didn't flinch, not even when he shouted again, "Get down." And in that moment I realized me daughter wasn't scared, she was calculating. I remember the sound, first a faint click of a safety being released. The fake officer's hand trembled slightly, but his arrogance overpowered his fear. He thought he had control, thought he was some kind of hero guarding the HOA's imaginary borders. Lily's voice cut through the air like steel. "You're not law enforcement," she said quietly, eyes locked on him. "That's a civilian firearm, and your badge is counterfeit." He scoffed. "Lady, I've got full HOA authority. You're trespassing on regulated grounds." I could barely process what I was hearing. HOA authority on a public driveway. Neighbors started to gather, whispering, recording, holding their breath as the standoff unfolded in the middle of our cul-de-sac. Lily slowly raised her hands, palms open. "Okay, let's calm down," she said, her tone deliberately measured. But as she took one small step closer, his nerves snapped. He yelled, "Stop, don't move." That was when her training hit it, and I saw it in her stance, her feet planted, eyes tracking every motion, fingers twitching slightly near her waist. She was reading him, anticipating him. I wanted to scream, to do something, but I was frozen, clutching my phone, torn between calling the police and fearing that one wrong move would get her shot. Then in one swift motion, he reached to grab her arm, shouting, "Hands where I can see them." Lily moved faster than I could blink. In one fluid motion, she twisted his wrist, sent the gun spinning onto the pavement, and had him face down on the ground. Before anyone could reach, the weapon slid under my car tire with a dull clang. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the man screamed, "You're assaulting an officer." But Lily didn't even blink. She pinned his arm behind his back, voice calm but deadly firm. "You're impersonating federal security. That's a felony." Her tone sent chills through me. The neighbors started murmuring, some in shock, others in awe. Miss Duncan whispered, "Oh my God, she's trained." I stepped closer, still shaking. "Lily, what's happening?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Mom, stay back," she said flatly. "This man's Not who he says. He is the fake officer squirm shouting, "You don't know who you're messing with." And then, as if fate wanted to prove him wrong, two black sus pulled up at the end of the street, tires screeching. Men and women in tactical gear stepped out, their badges glinting in the sun. My heart nearly stopped when I saw one of them nod at Lily and say, "Commander Hale, we've got your signal." The entire neighborhood gasped. The fake officer froze, eyes wide, realizing too late that the woman he pulled a gun on wasn't just any civilian. She was the real authority. But none of us spoke. The air was thick with disbelief, and I could only stare as they surrounded him, weapons drawn, but controlled, like a well-rehearsed dance of justice about to on for the so-called security guard's confidence evaporated instantly. His face turned pale and his voice cracked as he stammered, "I was just doing my job." But the tactical agents didn't buy it. One of them snapped on gloves, retrieving the fake badge and gun from under my car. "Tire unregistered, weapon falsify," he said grimly. Lily finally stood, brushing the dust from her jeans, her eyes sharp as glass. "You could have killed someone today," she said coldly. The man tried to speak, but his voice trembled. "They hired me to keep the area safe." She raised an eyebrow. "Safe from what?" Mothers and daughters unloading groceries. Her tone carried a sting that silenced everyone watching. The agents handcuffed him right there on the curb, reading him his rights as the crowd recorded. Every second, neighbors whispered, gasping as they pieced together what had just happened. Tante muttered, "She's spy," while another neighbor said, "Has been patrolling here all week." I could barely stand. My knees felt weak, my chest heavy, realizing how close my daughter had come to being shot by a man pretending to be someone he wasn't. Lily turned to me, her expression softening. "You okay, Mon?" she asked. I nodded, though my voice cracked. "I thought I was going to lose you." She gave a faint smile. "Not a chance. Within minutes, local police arrived to take over, but even they seemed unsure how to react when Lily flashed her credentials. The whole president came rushing down the street, red-faced and flustered, shouting, "There's been a misunderstanding. He was hired through an agency." Lily turned to him slowly, her voice steady but deadly serious. "You hired a convicted felon who impersonated federal security and carried an illegal firearm. That's not a misunderstanding, that's negligence." The man's mouth opened, but no words came out. Cameras were everywhere now. It was too late to hide anything. The agents began loading the impostor into one of the cells, and for a long moment the only sound was the hum of engines and the whisper of disbelief spreading through the neighborhood. As the SOS pulled away, I stood there in silence, watching my daughter command the situation with effortless authority. The same quiet, humble woman who helped me plant flowers and fix the fence had just dismantled an armed impostor in front of half the neighborhood. She finally exhaled, walking toward me, her tone softening again. "Mom, sorry. You had to see that," she said quietly. "This jaw doesn't usually follow me home." I shook my head, tears burning in my eyes. "You did what you had to." She nodded, once scanning the street one last time as officers began questioning witnesses. The neighbors who once whispered about her were now looking at her with awe and fear. And as the last so disappeared around the corner, the silence that followed was deafening, heavy with the realization that true authority doesn't always wear a shiny badge or yell the loudest. It stands calm, confident, and unshaken when everything else falls apart.